Okay, welcome to the Halal Fantasy Football League. This is the championship final episode for the 2022-2023 season. It took a while to get here because, as you guys know, we had a little bit of a hiccup in week 17 during the week leading up to it. So, better late than never, because at least we got a little bit more clarity. It's now week 18 and the regular season is done. It was actually a fun football. It was a fun football season, especially for me. Like, as a Lions fan, I really enjoyed the last regular season game of the week. Speaking as a Lions fan, we had the hope of going to the playoffs, but it was all contingent on Seattle losing to the Rams. That didn't happen. They flexed the Lions game to Sunday Night Football, and so we already knew we weren't going to make the playoffs. So who cares? Because they still have something to play for. If they weren't going to make the playoffs, neither were the Packers. Packers are a hated rival. Take a look at Aaron Rodgers, like, dumping all over the Lions, and the Lions social media. They kept the receipts, and it was so nice to beat them in their house. It was so awesome. So yeah. But anyways, back to the final. Our final is basically between Eric and Ritchie, and as you can see, as the scores show right here, the scores aren't counting at this time for week 17 for the Cincinnati game versus the Bills, because what happened is Damar Hamlin got hit in the chest as he was making a tackle on T. Higgins, got up, and then he collapsed. And in retrospect, as everyone knows, he had a cardiac arrest and was in a hospital for a while. He actually just went back to Buffalo today, but thankfully he made it through. But it hit the league so hard that they canceled the game, right? For a while, they were just going to say, maybe we'll reschedule it, maybe it'll be canceled. It kind of threw a monkey wrench in how the playoffs were going to be, and then so now even I think the Bengals got kind of screwed over about the playoffs, right? So if had it worked out a certain way in week 18, there was going to be a neutral site for the AFC Championship game, all kinds of funky stuff. But can you imagine like how it would affect, like, for fantasy? Like, we're a free league. Obviously, can you imagine like the gambling leagues that have money on the line, and then you have a close score, and then you have this uncertainty? It could be a mess. But fortunately for us, the game was both made it a little bit easier to stomach. It was it wasn't as a hard of a pill to swallow, and at the same time, when you look at all the different options, the way it worked out is, no matter what, I think we would have a clear-cut winner. And we did get some emails like during the uncertainty. I think on January 3rd, we got an email telling us about what could happen. There were some teams that already had conceded. Like, in some leagues, some people were conceding, but like, yeah, you have enough of a lead. But we decided to do was just wait and see what the NFL would do, and then make a decision based on that. The easiest thing to do is, I just don't want to have any general manager involvement if possible. Like, the less overreach on my part, I think the better. So if I can just leave it in the system's hands, in this case Yahoo's, then that would be better. But like, you can see how it was weird. It said week 17 standings will update for now, but scoring updates will be applied once a decision regarding the Bills-Bengals game status is made by the NFL. Waivers will be processed as normal for leagues playing in week 18. That doesn't apply to us. Our league ends at week 17. They'll be honoring the game book for week 17. In since they canceled that game, all the stats just disappeared, so I can't even find them. Payouts, thankfully we don't have to deal with that. And then if there's things that I had to do, like remember early in the season I did have to change scores because the our settings were wrong, so I had to retroactively go and fix the scores when I updated the scoring system. And then on January 6th we got another email because they did come up with a decision to actually cancel the game. Here it says, we understand Yahoo Fantasy managers have been awaiting further news regarding Week 17 matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills. The Week 17 Bills-Bengals game has been officially canceled by the NFL and will not resume. Based on our previous announcement, all fantasy points accumulated in the Bills-Bengals game will be zeroed out to reflect the official NFL record. All matchup scores and league standings are now up to date. And here's how it can affect your league. Public leagues, all fantasy points from the Bills-Bengals game have been removed and the season is over. This includes prize leagues. All fantasy points in private leagues from the Bengals-Bills game have been removed and the season is over. And they admit there's no one-size-fits solution for all, but they did consider some contingencies if you were not happy with just like tossing the scores. One is use original Bills-Bengals player projections from Week 17 and apply them to your matchup. Applying average points scored for rostered Bills-Bengals players over the last 4 weeks or any time frame to Week 17 matchup. So just taking an average. Combining official Week 17 results with Week 18 matchup results. So I think at the time Burrow had points and Chase had nothing. So it would have been like the few points that Burrow added, we combined it with what he had in Week 18 and then whatever Chase scored in Week 18. Removing results from Week 17 matchups and using 18 results instead. And so this was one that I thought would be an appropriate one if we had to make a decision. And then the last one, use Bills-Bengals players points from Week 18 and apply them to your Week 17 matchup. So that's that sounds like the same thing. What's the difference? Oh, I see it. No. This second one is to just like change the matchup. So Week 17, the entire thing doesn't count, and you would have to have a Week 18, and that's kind of like what we didn't want. That's the reason why we shortened the season anyway. This is the one, the last one I think is the one that I thought would be appropriate, is to just apply, at least for the Bills-Bengals guys, just take their Week 18 scores and stick it in Week 17. But turns out we can just leave it as is, because if you go back and I think do the math, and then it doesn't really matter because of how it played out. So let's actually take a look at the matchup. I do have a drink today. It's a gin and tonic. You can see it's kind of a little bit more fancy one. I don't know if I can get it in focus. And I have some herbs and a lime in here to make it all fancy, like. But it is very, very refreshing and good. Good boy. Okay, so that was the thing though about this matchup, is it seemed like it was gonna play out as something really nice, in that the Monday night game between the Bills and the Bengals, they had something to play for, and these two were gonna go head to head in our fantasy league. And you can see like what they would have tried to do was Burrow versus Chase, right? Which is kind of counterproductive because Burrows is scoring points, but if he throws to Chase, then he's giving more points to Chase and it offsets him. So it was going to play out really, really nicely had the game been close. But as you can see, without these scores, it was 106 to 77.7 because Ritchie had built up a sizable lead even before getting into that Monday night game. Ritchie had Jared Goff, who was a solid pickup, 24.6, helping him carry through. Chris Godwin had a pretty good breakout game, 17.5. James Conner had a respectable 14.1. Kamara 10.10. Tyler Higbee was kind of meh at 2.6. Etienne had one of his more mid-season strong type of games where he was strong and had a lot of production, right? He had 108 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, and 32 receiving yards, so he had 22.4. McLaughlin was kind of down, so he only had 3.8, and the Dallas D had 10.9. For Eric, he was kind of relying on Waddle, but I mean, this was one of those where a lot of those heavy hitters that you relied on just didn't show up again, at least for Eric on his side. So Waddle was one of them. Dalvin Cook, I know he hasn't been really high on him, so that wasn't too good. Jacobs actually had a bounce back game. He had 19.2. Evan Ingram had a letdown at 3.5. Would have been better starting Taysom Hill in his place, who had 14.66. Nick Chubb had a decent 13.5. Gano had 9.1, which is pretty good. And a San Francisco D, which had only 3.4. It's kind of crazy if you think about San Francisco. I know they're supposed to be a good D, but it seems like they didn't really perform well fantasy wise, right? So they're good at just like keeping other teams in check, but maybe not necessarily gaining all those stats that give you the points that you need. And then off the bench, I think the most notable ones for Ritchie is maybe Conklin having 11 points. That would have been a better play instead of Tyler Higbee. And then for Eric, like we already said, Taysom Hill was good, and we don't know what if Deshaun Watson would have done better than Burrow because Burrow's scores were canceled. But yeah, just in general, it wasn't enough to catch Ritchie, and it was going to be a long shot. The probability of winning was already heavy on Ritchie's side come Monday night. What would have had to happen, because if you look at the score differential right here, what is this? Let me do some maths. 106 to 77.7, 28.3. So he would have to have a differential of Joe Burrow scoring 28.3 more than Jamar Chase. So if Jamar Chase scored 10 points, Burrow would have had to have 28.4 in order for Eric to pull off. 38.4, which isn't out of the realm of possibility, right, for someone like Burrow. But it's hard to do with keeping Chase on the sideline without him being injured. So it was always going to be a long shot for Eric. And so, like we said, it was very anticlimactic when the game got put on hold and we were just in a holding pattern and waiting. Yeah, so if you look at their scores, remember the different possibilities that we could have had is combining week 17 and 18, or just using week 18. If you look, Jamar Chase actually outplayed Burrow. So he had 18.6, and Joe Burrow had 15.4 in week 18. So if we were to use these week 18 scores, Ritchie would have actually built a lead because Chase had about 3.2 points more than Burrow. If we had combined them, it's really hard to tell like what it is because they deleted it, right? Week 17 is just no longer exists, so those stats don't apply. But if I'm going by memory, I think Joe Burrow had something like 7 points and Jamar Chase had 0, if I'm remembering it correctly. So that would get you Joe Burrow to 22.4 versus Jamar Chase's 18.6. That's still not the 28 point whatever that would have been needed by Eric to catch up to Ritchie. So that means any which way you slice it, we have our winner. Congrats to Ritchie. You are our Halava Fantasy Football League champion for 2022, moving into 2023. Great job just overall. I think for Ritchie, you were drafting later in the rounds. I think, were you drafting last? You were either drafting second to the last or the last. And you had a good draft. And you also made like very sound moves. I keep harping on like some of them, like getting Jared Goff as a pivot when Kyler Murray ran down. So those are all good moves. But yeah, it was a good time. It was good fun. I'm sure like a lot of you guys enjoyed it. We look forward to next year when we can get back at it. That's all I got, man. So thanks everybody for participating, and look forward to the next draft, which is going to be sometime in August or September of this year. So we can have a nice little party again, because the draft party also was pretty awesome, as the first episode of this season showed. Yeah, that's it. So see you later. Congrats, Ritchie. Halava Fantasy Football League champion 2022 to 2023. Bye.
All three opponents over 500. How do you like your chances?
Well, one of them's at 500 right now. We'll see where we're at the end of the season.
Last two at home, that would be winnable. Our record's pretty damn good with me starting.
Thankfully, we got a great, foot guy in town.
Winning in, we're not even going to talk about the other scenario because we're winning.
Look, no disrespect, but I don't think they really stopped us.
I had a piece about it. I had a piece about all of it. Whatever was supposed to happen, I was surrendered to that reality.
Can't lose a game like that against that team, though. So that's going to hurt for a while.
I'll try and watch, what I say a little better moving forward.